Correct.
All right, stop talking about Avenatti.
He's in trouble.
How's it going, everybody? Can you hear us? Yesterday, sorry about that. Yesterday, live streamers, I forgot to hit go live. Oops.
All that reefer catching up to you.
I know. That's what everybody was saying on the live stream. Dude, quit getting stoned before the show. Come on.
Yeah, hey, nothing wrong with that.
Well, I don't know. Yesterday, there may have been.
Can people hear me? I can't hear the...
Oh, you can't hear?
Yeah. How about this?
Hello?
Hello. Oh, man. Hello.
Still nothing?
Sacramento. Hello.
Can you hear it?
No.
You can't hear anything out of your headphones?
No. Do one of your little things, like you go play a Pritzker thing. Whoa, I hear that. I just don't hear me. So, whatever.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, man. Get the bong out.
All right, your Ben Joravsky show. Yeah, boy, I wish you would have told me that before we started. Okay, your Ben Joravsky show for Thursday, January 16th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Still not hearing anything, Ben? All right, guys, I'm throwing the music back on. We got to figure this out.
No, I mean...
All right, you're going to have to live with it, Ben.
Oh, whoa.
Do the best you can.
Wait, time out.
What?
I hear that.
Okay, cool. All right.
It was the headphones. It was the wrong headphones.
Yeah, that's crazy.
One pill makes you larger.
Good God. Why do if you're a millennial and you listen to this, thank you. Good God, these songs you sing.
Wait, you got to turn it down a little bit. Now it's too high.
Oh, my
it's
goodness.
one extreme or the other.
Oh, my God.
Oh, there we go. Cut between two lovers.
I got to hear myself sing. All right, guys, hold on.
Where did that song come from?
Ben, get your song of the day ready. Please focus. I got a feeling it's going to be one of these days. Your Ben Joravsky Show for Thursday, January 16th is just moments away. But before we get into this, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring our program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace, Non-Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9 sponsor this program, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and sponsoring the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor.
I just want to say one thing before I sing. Frank, if you're listening, you and I are in the same wavelength. And now I will sing. Everybody must get stoned.
Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Thursday, January 16th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, in these times, writer Miles Kampf-Lassin will be back. We're talking with union man Jeff Johnson, and it's the return of political strategist PC Peter Cunningham. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Something's Going On Thursday. And here's why. So woke up this morning, D.
What time?
Bright and early at 9:45. Hopped out of bed and said to myself, I wonder what Johnny Cass is up to. Yeah, John Cass. The right columnist for my not-so-beloved Chicago Tribune, but I subscribe to it every day. I like to read Cass. I like to see what the other side's up to. I'm not one of these lefties who go, I only read lefties. So I read the right, D. Maybe they can convince me. Hasn't happened yet, but, maybe they convince me. So I open up the Tribune, just like this.
That's how you open a paper, guys. That's the sound of it. I know a lot of millennials don't know that sound.
Millennials like, whoa, man, that's some trippy stuff. Anyway, open up the paper, and what do I see? A John Cass column sort of defending Bernie Sanders.
That's correct.
Oh, Robert Mueller? Yes, that is correct. A John Cass column crying crocodile's tears. No, take crocodile out. That's not fair. Crying tears over CNN's treatment of Bernie Sanders. And I'm like, I found myself agreeing with young Johnny because I did think CNN was biased in that debate. And furthermore, as we discussed yesterday with David Ferris, an excellent interview, if I must say so myself, which we will download, Wendy.
You'll be able to get that on Saturday. Benny J. bonus interview coming Saturday. David Ferris.
Very good. Thank you, Roosevelt University Professor David Ferris, one of the smartest guys in the city of Chicago when it comes to interpreting national politics. We talked about the overall biases implicit in the questions and the framing of issues by the CNN crew. But what Jump Shot Johnny Cass was talking about, he was talking about the question where when Bernie was asked point blank, did you tell Elizabeth Warren that a woman couldn't win the presidency? And Bernie Sanders denied it vehemently. And then Abby Phillip, the moderator, turned to Elizabeth Warren and said, what did you think when Bernie Sanders said that to you? Which was just like a stunning moment. I was like, when it happened, I'm like, is she trying to be funny or ironic?
Is she not listening?
Is she kind of hard not to hear Bernie? He said it like she asked him point blank, directly. Did you say it? He goes, no, I did not say it. That's like a
You're getting there. You're getting there.
You think I'm getting better?
Yeah. Not bad.
Not bad. Thank you, D. Anyway, this guy's the master of the Bernie Sanders imitation, okay? He does it great. He's better than Larry David, ladies and gentlemen.
Please stop.
Anyway, so, I thought it was a bizarre moment, to put it mildly. Didn't know what she was up to. But anyway, so there was John Cass saying that it's proof that CNN has a bias against Bernie and that the whole system is rigged against Bernie Sanders.
I like where this is going. I'm trying to get this John Cass interview, and every time you say something bad, then we can never book him. So far, we're on the good track here. Keep it up, Ben.
I don't know if you're going to like where I'm heading. thought, I don't know. I guess I've been covering politics in the city of Chicago for too long, D. All right? I'm always a little skeptical when someone on the far right, and Johnny's on the far right, when someone who wears a MAGA hat, and Johnny has a MAGA hat,
Hey.
when they say something nice about a lefty like Bernie. I'm like, what's going on here? So you know what I did, D? I did something I don't usually do. I went on Twitter. Okay.
Oh, God. Way to go.
Let's see
I'm proud of you,
what
actually.
the Twitter universe is doing. So, I called a millennial, got help, and figured out how to do it. And I discovered, lo and behold.
Didn't call me.
No, you're the oldest millennial I've ever. This guy, I love him dearly, but he's like worthless. He's the worst millennial. He likes Tom Petty, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes, I went on Twitter, D. What did I discover? It was like a MAGA hat talking point. MAGA hatters throughout the country are weighing in.
It's like Mad Hatters. I like that.
MAGA hatters, yeah. They were weighing in. They were outraged. They were upset. They were defending Bernie, including Donnie Trump Jr. Donald Trump Jr., son of Donnie Trump, president. You know that, Donald Trump? Even he weighed in. And I realized they were all getting their talking points. You know, I talked the other day about how the Tea Party is issuing talking points. Pretty soon I'm going to get a Tea Party email. An email from the Tea Party defending Bernie and attacking C. And I see it coming. The talking points are going out. They're defending Bernie. Let me tell you something, folks, right now. All Bernie Sanders supporters out there. I'm going to tell you something. I love Bernie as much as the next lefty. I voted for him in 2016. I probably will vote for him in 2020. But I do not believe, and nor should any of you believe, that anyone of the MAGA hat wearing persuasion really cares about Bernie Sanders. The conventional wisdom, which most MAGA hatters buy into, is that Bernie is the easiest opponent for Donald Trump to defeat. This is conventional wisdom, not just on the right. This is conventional wisdom on the left as well, or in the center, I should say. If you listen to Rahm Emanuel, if you listen to David Axelrod, if you listen to pretty much any of the talking heads that dominate in the news media these days, they will tell you that a leftist like Bernie cannot win. That he's just too much of an extremist, and that the Republicans have a book filled with embarrassing photos of Bernie Sanders shirtless in Russia or shirtless in Nicaragua. I'm not quite sure where he was when he was shirtless, D, but they keep saying, we can't wait for Bernie Sanders to be the candidate to running against Donald Trump because we could beat him with this photograph of Bernie without a shirt on. I'm just telling you what the conventional wisdom is. Now, I happen not to share that conventional wisdom. I have been convinced over the years by people like, let's see, my good friend Adolfo Mondragon, big Bernie supporter, Carlos Ramirez Rosa, another big Bernie supporter, Miles Kampf-Lassin, who comes in here, will be here in about 15 minutes, has also convinced me of this. My daughters and her friends, millennials of the leftist persuasion, have convinced me that we have to rethink the conventional wisdom in this country when it comes to politics, and that a left-of-center politician like Bernie, who is true to what he has always believed in, has not wavered, can win. Young Dr. D has convinced me this as well. So I break from conventional wisdom. I think Bernie can win, and I think it would be a great thing for this country to finally confront or deal with the issues that he raises in a meaningful way, like in terms of health care or education, college education for all. Income inequality, dealing with that as an issue. So I do believe Bernie can win, and I hope he can win, and I hope his ideas could transform American politics. But not once do I believe that any MAGA hat wearer shares my belief, shares my conviction. I know this sounds cynical, D. I know this sounds like a guy who's been covering Chicago politics for too long, that they're really up to no good. And that they're crying crocodile tears for Bernie because they think he's the easiest candidate to beat. And even if he is not the candidate, they want to split Bernie's supporters from whichever Democratic candidate gets the nomination. So if Joe Biden gets the nomination, they could play on the old themes that they hammered at in 2016, trying to pit Hillary Clinton supporters against Bernie supporters. This is their tactic. They're already starting in on it. So this is my advice to Bernie Sanders supporters out there. Don't believe the crocodile tears. We got a great show today, everybody. Miles Kampf-Lassin will be in the studio. Be curious what Miles has to say about this, D. I'm pretty sure he shares my disdain for the way CNN ran that debate, but we'll see what he has to think about the crocodile tears of the right. Jeff Johnson, pension guru, will be in here at 2 o'clock. I'm going to talk to him about the reefer tax, D. Yeah, is that part of your news update? No, the reefer tax.
Nope.
See great pre-show planning on the part of me and D. D, you going to talk about that reefer tax? There was a story in the Sun Times today with the reefer tax could be as high as 41%. That's stiff, man.
I got a little bit of information on that, just a little bit.
Okay, is Nickelback Bernie charging a reefer tax? No, I don't think so. Anyway, Peter PC Cunningham will be in the studio. PC, political strategist, usually comes in and brings his guitar, but apparently he's not bringing his guitar today, D. So we'll be talking about politics with PC, but no guitar today. He told me.
Crap.
I know. Good. So
I was
anyway,
hoping we'd play Stairway to Heaven today.
yeah, maybe he'll sing it without playing it. Anyway, so plenty of...
As long as you don't sing it.
Plenty of political talk ahead of us. Before we do that, the young man from Alton, the man they call Dr. Doobie, with the news.
Well, hang tight. Let me just cancel this email I was going to send to John Cass. Okay, and delete.
Okay.
All right.
Crocodile tears.
How's it going, everybody?
So much about Bernie. Yeah, right.
John Cass will never be on this show, guys. So
come
keep
on,
trying.
Man. I read him, okay? I read the guy. Doesn't that count for something? By the way, Frank, you and I are in the same wavelength on that one.
Yeah, our avid Ben Joravsky Show listener Frank weighed in before the show and brought up John Cass and Bernie. All right, before we talk about what's happening in Chicago and or Illinois this afternoon, about that Chicago City Council meeting on Wednesday. More details from the meeting have emerged since we last left you. It was a long meeting, nearly 4 hours this council meeting lasted, and you never know what to expect when it comes to these things. And the following from the Chicago Sun-Times and Fran the Woman Spielman really highlights that point. Mayor Lori Lightfoot admonished a handful of African-American aldermen during Wednesday's city council meeting for, quote, demonizing the gay community and said that, quote, the pie is big enough to slice in lots of other ways. For those who finally decided to crawl out from that rock they've been living under for the last year, Lori Lightfoot is Chicago's first openly gay mayor. So yeah, she's going to have a problem when you, quote, demonize the gay community. The mayor was disturbed by the tone of committee debate Tuesday on her resolution to launch a study that could lay groundwork for creating contract set aside for gay and transgender-owned businesses in Chicago. African-American aldermen led by Black Caucus Chairman Jason Irvin, Ben of which ward?
28th.
Oh, God, you're a dork. And Alderman Walter Burnett, Ben?
27th.
They voiced concern earmarking contracts for gay business owners could pave the way for, quote, privileged white men to game the system again at the expense of African Americans. They stated that there was no apparent way to prove a person's sexuality and therefore that a set aside for gay business owners would be ripe for corruption. Then they used an Adam Sandler situational comedy film as an example of what they're talking about, a little off-putting, and the mayor was having none of it by the end of Tuesday's discussion. Then on Wednesday, the study came up again, and the concern followed soon after. Alderman David Moore, Ben, what ward?
David Moore, 17th.
That's right. Alderman David Moore demanded the
You
roll.
caught me off guard with that one. I didn't see David Moore coming. What high school did he go to?
I'm not as big as a dork as you. Alderman David
Simeon.
Moore. Oh, good Lord.
What high school did Walter Burnett
Please
go
stop.
to?
Alderman David
Wells.
Moore of the 17th Ward demanded the roll call on the study at the city council meeting. So they did that, and the study passed 47-1. David Moore was the only one who voted no. Lightfoot, once again having none of it, took to the microphone and shared her thoughts with the alderman who spoke up and opposed the study, saying, quote, "It's not the questions that are the problem, it is the content of the question and the offensive nature of the tone and the questions and the concerns that were expressed. As a black gay woman proud on all fronts, I have to say I'm disturbed by the nature of the committee discussion and the nature of the discussion here today. We need not ask anyone's indulgence, patience, or forgiveness or acceptance to be who we are and who we love. My friends, the pie is big enough to slice it in lots of other ways. We need not victimize, demonize, and discriminate through our words against anyone else because we are worried about what the size of the pie is going to be for me." And if you needed any more evidence as to where a majority of our aldermen stood on this, I mean, besides a 47-1 to vote, after her speech, Lightfoot received a standing ovation from the city council. Damn, these things are entertaining, Ben. How do we do a live broadcast at one of these? Who do we got to talk to?
Well, first of all, DG David Glowatz, Mr. Bike, was at the city council meeting, and he was recording bits and pieces, and he'll be in our studio tomorrow with the breakdown. All right, like remember the last time he did the breakdown?
Nice.
He fed those bits to you, and of course the master and the maestro of technology, you played them, and then we analyzed them. So we will kind of have a live version.
Well, we're going to give Dave Glowatz a new title right here, right now. City Council Correspondent.
Wow, that's really, how accurate. That's really good. I like that. And he's still Mr. Bike.
All right, now I know that our listening audience has been dying to hear a straight white guy's take on LGBT and black issues. Well, the wait is over. Ben Joravsky, let's hear your thoughts here. Seriously, though, you've been covering politics in the city for over 3 decades. Good Lord, you're old. But you do have a keen knowledge as to what goes on behind the scenes in this very shady city we live in. Your thoughts, please.
Well, first of all, 4 decades. You're older than you thought. I know. Good God, he's
Trying
old.
to help you out, dude.
I really just came around in the 90s, dude. Well, as I said yesterday, D, I am all over the map on this one. On one hand, I do think the much of the discourse, what was it, on Tuesday, was offensive. They kept making jokes based on a really bad, and I love Adam Sandler as much as the next one, but this movie was, what was it called, with Kevin James?
I now pronounce you Chuck and Larry.
Yeah, all right. So they were making Chuck and Larry jokes, and so it was pretty offensive. You know, it was kind of like locker room humor. That said, I understand the concern of the black aldermen in Chicago City Council. This has been the issue of dividing the pie so that black people get a fair slice, to use Lori Lightfoot's metaphor, has been on the table in the city of Chicago going back to even before I started covering politics in this town, D, when I was just reading about it back in the 70s, 10 years before you were born. And this was an issue in the city of Chicago. We finally made some progress when Harold Washington was elected mayor of the city of Chicago. I remember this. We have a municipal bond industry in the city. The people who write the bonds, underwrite the bonds when the city goes to borrow money, as it's been explained to me by people in the know, it's not exactly the hardest practice in the world that any competent, thoughtful lawyer could do it with the proper training. But for years and years, it was just white guys who got in on the business. When Harold Washington became mayor, he said, no, I want some black attorneys to get a piece of this pie. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, they did. All right. Then Harold Washington dies. Mayor Daley takes over. And suddenly the city doesn't really care about using its resources to help black people as much. So I share their concern. And every year it seems as though when the city totals up the amount of contracts that have been divvied out to black-owned firms, it's less than it should be. It's less than they promise. It's less than their goals. And so whoever's in charge of procurement for the city of Chicago will say, we're going to do better next year. And then next year rolls around, and they don't do better next year. So I understand their concerns. So I think their rhetoric was off. I think their tone was off. I think they undercut the legitimacy of the argument they were raising. But I do think that there's some legitimate concern, and I am always very concerned about how the pie is divided. The pie has always been unfairly divided, in my opinion. That's one of my main gripes about the TIF program, which is money that's supposed to go to the poorest black wards in the city, the poorest Hispanic wards in the city, low-income wards that are struggling for economic development. Somehow or other, it goes to the richest wards. So the city, when it comes to its track record of divvying up the pie, is not that fair to the people who could really use a slice. So I just wouldn't be I wouldn't, if I were the leader of the city of Chicago, if I were the mayor of the city of Chicago, I would just not be so easy just to dismiss the concerns of people who feel that the pie has been unfairly divvied up over the last, 40 years, 50 years, even before I was covering politics in Chicago. So I'm interested to see what this report's going to come up with. Can they do this program fairly? We'll see.
So you're saying good point, but poor presentation.
Yes, horrible presentation, offensive presentation.
Okay.
Lori Lightfoot was absolutely correct to chastise them for the presentation, but I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss the concerns.
All right, aside from the LGBT study, there was other business tended to. Yesterday, we mentioned that the mayor, along with the city's aldermen, are looking to ban styrofoam in city restaurants by the year 2021.
Hear, hear.
The aldermen also, quote, tweaked cannabis zoning, helped the city acquire a handful of vacant properties near the under-construction Obama Presidential Center, and passed an anti-gentrification measure targeting Humboldt Park and Logan Square.
Yeah, we'll be talking about that anti-gentrification measure today with PC Peter Cunningham, probably tomorrow with David Glow. Let's take the deep dive on that one. Are there things the city can do to prevent gentrification in neighborhoods like Humboldt Park? That's where this particular measure was earmarked. Or around the Obama Library. In the past, the city has done absolutely nothing to prevent gentrification. Quite the contrary, the city has done what it can to spark gentrification and to keep it going by subsidizing deals, housing deals like Lincoln Yards. Lincoln Yards was like fuels gentrification. You're pumping public dollars into private ventures that will just cause property taxes to rise. It's the exact opposite of putting the brakes on gentrification. So the city is very slow to deal with the issue of gentrification. By and large, the prevailing wisdom of the people who run this city is that gentrification is a good thing. So now suddenly they're kind of changing their tune a little bit. Yesterday's measure was just like a little step in the direction of dealing with this issue.
All right, moving on, everybody. It is primary election season in Illinois. And hey, if you want to feel like a broke ass, keep it right here, because right now, the numbers are in. The numbers are in my face. It is time. Okay, come on, wrap it up there, sound effect. Fourth quarter election campaign finance numbers are in.
Ding, 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 ding.
Campaign cash reports have come out.
Ding.
What is that?
That was the ding ding of the cash register.
Guys, that was the ding ding of the cash register for those listening who was wondering what that was. One more time.
Ding 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 ding.
Oh my God, is there a cash register here?
I know. It's the fourth quarter.
Holy cow.
Reset 2020.
Okay.
Oh, wrong sport.
Yeah, no sports references. All right, fourth quarter election campaign finance numbers are in Illinois. Campaign cash reports have come out, and my God, Illinois House Speaker Michael Joseph Madigan has a bunch of it.
Big surprise there.
The latest quarterly report from the State Board of Elections show the total cash raised and the total cash on hand for 4 Madigan-controlled campaigns. Let's go through all four of them. And people, I highly suggest not looking at your bank account while we do this. We want you to have a good day, all right? We don't want to bum you out, all right? So let's go ahead and start this here, beginning with Friends of Michael J. Madigan.
All right, that's one.
Total raised $5,311,802.27.
Who let Bernie in the room?
Cash on hand, $11,461,542.39.
Wow, see, he's raising money. He still has money that's unspent. He has got $11 million. It's just pouring in. Good God.
So that was one of them. Friends of Michael J. Madigan. Really rich friends he's got there. All right, on to the next one. The Democratic Party of Illinois.
Yeah, okay.
Amount raised, $1,587,029.21. Total cash on hand for the Democratic Party of Illinois, $2,168,795.55.
All right.
Thoughts on that?
Well, same thing as the first thought. Well, I have a lot of. I want to hear where you're going with this, and then I'm going to give you all my thoughts.
Let's continue. Up next, it's the 13th Ward Democratic Organization.
Okay, he's the committeeman in the 13th Ward.
Amount raised, not in the millions. $656,385.
Okay. Yeah.
Cash on hand, $2 million.
Okay.
$429,574.30.
All right, so he has his own personal fundraising operation, the Friends of Michael Madigan. Then he's the head of the Illinois Democratic Party, so he controls that fundraising fund. And now he's the committeeman, the Democratic committeeman of the 13th Ward, so he oversees that fund. And what's the fourth one, D?
The fourth one says Democratic majority. $983,936.71 raised. Cash on hand, $5 million. Wait, $5 million.
$5 million. It's not billion.
I was gonna say, huh?
No, it's million with an M.
I went to community college, guys.
But you know the difference between an M and a B.
$5,569.15.
I believe they cover that in some of the classes at community college. The difference between an M and a B. D. MBD. Listen, here's the deal. I'm all over the map on this one.
I don't think you need to say that anymore for anything on this show.
The inner reformer in me is outraged. Outraged, I tell you, that the suckers and saps in this town just keep throwing more money at Michael Joseph Madigan. On the other hand, Miles Kampf-Lassin has entered the building. Miles Kampf-Lassin has entered the building. Love to hear his thoughts on this. On the other hand, the Republicans are raising money, tremendous gobs of money too. So should I, as my inner reformer, say, no, Michael Joseph Madigan, raise no more money while the Republicans continue to raise money? Donald John Trump is just, I forget how many millions he's raised in just the last quarter alone. I know it dwarfs anything the Democrats have. So, okay, Michael Joseph Madigan, stop raising money. People stop giving money to Michael Joseph Madigan when the Republicans stop raising money, when people stop giving money to the Republicans. Same thing as the fair maps. It's like all the reformers in Illinois, this is just outrageous that Michael Madigan's raising all this money. Oh, yeah? Where's your outrage about the Republicans? See, that's my problem, D. The way the system is set up, it's just too much money in the system, and it leads to all kinds of corruption. But that's the system. So if you just want to roll over and let Republicans win, then, yeah, beat up on Michael Joseph Madigan. That said, the issue that Adolfo Mondragon raises is one which Chicago, there was that study that those numbers you're reading from Rich Miller, correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rich had a link. Rich Miller, outstanding journalist.
What up, Rich?
Had a link to a Chicago Tribune story that talks about how Michael Madigan has spent over $400,000 of very legal fees. So I don't know how that's legal. You know what I'm saying?
Where's Jim Coogan when you need him?
Well,
huh?
Jim Coogan or Adolfo Mondragon can weigh in on this stuff. So listen. If we're going to clean up politics, if we're going to take money out of politics, it's got to be across the board. It can't just be, we condemn Michael Joseph Madigan when the Democrats do it and look the other way when Donald Trump does it. And that's what too many of my friends of the Republican persuasion do in this town. When it comes to reform, they only get outraged when Democrats engage in sleazy practices. They have nothing to say when Republicans do it. So when we can have a bipartisan effort to take money out of politics, I will jump aboard it. But right now, all it looks as though is Republicans pretending they're reformers, getting outraged when Michael Joseph Madigan raises money from all the suckers and saps in town who pony up, and then they look the other way when Donald John Trump does. That's my thought, D. There you go. That's my thought on that one. I don't believe
that's
anything.
Billion with a B.
I don't believe anything with the word reform in it when it comes in Illinois, because generally, we'll see what Miles has to say after we take the break, bring him on. Generally, when reform is uttered in the state of Illinois, it means taking something from someone and giving it to someone else. And in this particular case, when they talk about campaign finance reform, they want to take power from the Democrats and give it to Republicans.
Meanwhile, producer Dennis looks at his own bank account. Let me look. $36. Awesome. Great. All right, so there you go, everybody.
Yeah.
That's the latest of what's going on in Chicago and or Illinois. We'll keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along, by the way. Shout out to the YouTube live stream chat. We are having one hell of a conversation on Bernie, Trump, Elizabeth Warren, all things the debate last night.
We got Miles ready to go on it. He's ready to go on this.
If you're listening live, join in on the YouTube live stream chat. Who knows, a little later on, we may read your comments. People don't go anywhere. Miles Kampf-Lassin of In These Times is with us, and we got some Bernie to discuss. It's the Ben Joravsky Show live from the Chicago Sun-Times. The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by Northwestern University's part-time master's program in literature and liberal studies.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
There were 91,000 people.
When you lose a loved one whose wishes were to be cremated, Chicagoland Cremation Options provides your family a dignified and affordable cremation service. Chicagoland Cremation Options helps you bypass the expensive overhead of a funeral home or cemetery by streamlining the cremation directly. It saves you sometimes thousands of dollars. Chicagoland Cremation Options Crematory, just south of O'Hare, 5 minutes west of Chicago. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend Douglas Klein. You can find them at ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
But she paid a terrible price. She was abused through the hearing. She was taken advantage of. Her reputation was attacked. I wish I could have done something. I opposed Clarence Thomas' nomination. I voted against him. But I also realized there was a real and perceived problem the committee faced. There were a bunch of white guys hearing this.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. J-E-F-F. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Hey, shout out to Margie Deal, who weighed in on the YouTube live stream chat. Welcome to the live stream chat, and welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Miles Kampf-Lassin. I've been dying to talk to Miles all day, and so much Bernie talk to have, so much debate talk to have, Joe Biden talk to have, CNN critique, mainstream media dealing with Bernie Sanders, right-wing MAGA hat wearers trying to pretend like they care about Bernie Sanders, impeachment is breaking out. Good God, Miles, so much to discuss. But let's just talk about something that I began with. Get your thoughts on. We've had you and I have had just a little bit on this topic. Whenever I hear or read a right winger or a MAGA hatter crying crocodile tears for Bernie and talking about how the system's rigged, I just have to shake my head. I absolutely convinced that the MAGA hat wearers see Bernie as a useful tool because they want to divide Bernie supporters from the rest of the Democratic Party to make it easier for Donald Trump to win. And so they play upon what are some really real biases that CNN exposed in that debate in order to just wreak havoc for Democrats. It's like they don't really care about Bernie Sanders. They don't want to advance Bernie Sanders' political career. They don't want to advance the ideas that he's that he stands for his entire life, right?
No, I mean, I think they're fundamentally opposed to the entire political project that Bernie Sanders represents, at least when it comes to the, commentators and strategists and all of the, people that you might be referring to. I do think there's a slight difference with, I doubt there's tons of MAGA hat supporters that are willing to even think about Bernie anyway. But I mean, I've been to Iowa. I think that there's plenty of Republicans that want to get their student debt canceled, that there's aspects of Bernie's program that voters might buy into, but they're not the ones writing these columns about, Bernie's necessarily mistreated. That said, I mean, there's a reason that the media in this country is one of the least trusted institutions, and it's because it was on full display during that debate. I mean, you saw how bad faith those questions were and what, they were trying to get out of it. I mean, besides any of the, Bernie Warren spat, they also compared Bernie Sanders' stance on trying to remove troops in the Middle East to Khomeini, to saying, you're just like this, Iranian dictator. Are you guys on the same side? They said, your healthcare plan is going to bankrupt the country. What are you going to do about that? It's using this framing of these questions that aren't just Republican talking points. They're defending the type of corporate cocktail party milieu that has these discussions and are shaking in their boots about what a political revolution of people in the streets demanding fundamental change would mean for them. And I think that that's very unrepresentative of what people everywhere want to hear about. They don't think, universal health care is going to bankrupt the country. And especially when, the whole conversation, I was glad to see that debate started out with a conversation about war and peace. That said, as you saw, there was zero questions about the cost of war. And yet there's a million, when it comes to any kind of domestic spending, all we talk about is the cost. When we talk about, Trump's tax bill that, was added trillions of dollars to the deficit and over 80% of it went to benefit the wealthiest Americans, we don't talk about the cost. It's only when it comes to programs that are going to actually benefit working and poor people in the country, not the type of people usually represented in the corporate media sphere, that suddenly, we got to ask, what are you going to do about bankrupting the country? So I think that there is people on all sides of the political spectrum are right to be upset with CNN about how that went, and I'm not surprised, that John Cass would pick up on that as well. That said, I agree with you that I don't think that, suddenly we should see any of these longtime Republican strategists or, pontificators as now on our side.
Well, it wasn't just Johnny Cass. It was Donald Trump Jr. tweeted it out. I figure Cass gets his talking points from the MAGA hatters. So this was the line they were putting out. But you just think about what you said. You just did a good job of pointing out the biases that were implicit in the questions, the framing of the questions that CNN asked, starting with, let's just deal with healthcare. You're going to how are you going to justify bankrupting the country? Yeah. Just bankrupting the country. Just the concept of.
And that's on their Chiron on the, bottom of the screen. So even if you, didn't hear the whole question, that's what they're throwing in your face. So it's very clear how they're trying to manage this conversation.
Do you notice, just to finish my point, do you notice that Donald John Trump Jr. and John Cass and Rich Lowry and all the other right-wingers did not call them on the carpet for the implicit bias in that question? Yeah. Because they will be turning right around, Miles, if Bernie is the candidate, And they will be writing that.
Yeah.
They will be writing that point that he's going to bankrupt the country by raising taxes on people for his health care. The same bias that's implicit in the question as framed by CNN, they will. So they don't complain about CNN when they have a bias on that regards, but this spat between Bernie and Elizabeth, oh my God, we're outraged.
Yeah. Well, I think that there's, I agree that this is, it's not just John Cass that's making this argument. There's other people that are, feigning concern over it. And I do think that's strategic because it's a way to, cause more division in the Democratic primary electorate. But I also think that, they're at the same time, the Trump campaign is putting out multiple press releases saying Bernie Sanders is a threat to our country. Bernie Sanders is wants to, destroy American lives with an open borders policy. They're trying to pummel their talking points, and they're training their sights on Bernie for a reason, I think, because they see, obviously, he's, in a very good place in the polls right now to perform well in the Democratic primaries, since they think now's the time they got to do this. I heard you earlier in the program, talking about the having some big Oppo file, and the video is already out of him shirtless in the Soviet Union.
Oh,
for one
Soviet
thing.
Union is not there. Okay, I always get the countries
former
mixed up.
Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But yeah, this, if that's what they have, I can't. It's hard for me to. Obviously they're going to say all this, but they're already throwing that at him in the Democratic primary. He's already been so opposed and unchallenged. You compare that to somebody like Joe Biden, who they asked a single question about Iraq, and then he said it was a mistake, and they moved on. And he tried to paint himself as somebody who, we shouldn't kid ourselves. Joe Biden is still leading the Democratic nomination. This is the person that is most likely going to be the Democratic nominee, unless, we're going to start seeing vote totals come in the next few weeks. So that could change. But right now, that's what, people expect. And this is somebody who didn't just vote for the Iraq War. He was like the leading Democratic cheerleader for it even after the war began. Throughout 2003, he was giving speeches. He said, I would do it again. He toured the Middle East to try to drum up support for the war. He advocated sending 20 to 50,000 additional troops in August of 2003. This is somebody who was, a big-time backer of it. He said, I support our president. Our president is popular. About George W. Bush. He's going to try to, mischaracterize his record now, and I understand that, but the fact that CNN is not calling out the leading Democratic nominee and instead doing these pointed questions towards Bernie Sanders shows exactly how they're trying to operate this primary, and that shows that they still see Bernie Sanders as an outsider, and that type of opposition that he's going to face from the media is the same he would face in a general election too. So if you're talking about somebody who's been tested and people are worried that once Bernie's the nominee, the Republicans will just destroy him. Mm-hmm. I think you should look at the press releases that are coming from the Trump campaign that show that they don't know how to respond to Bernie Sanders because he has an incredibly popular program. And I think it's a positive thing that he has such passionate supporters. That goes to show that somebody has hit a nerve with the American public, and that's not something to shy away from.
All right. What was your sense of the Bernie Warren showdown at the debate?
Well, it's very there's no good way to spin what is happening. That's a very bad development in the primary, and it's nasty. And I think it shows that this is this is clearly a very difficult issue for a lot of people to talk about. And ultimately, that comes down to a conversation between two people that we don't understand. We got the audio of what they said to each other after the debate, but we don't know what was said in 2018. So there's no way to have, there's no way for somebody to be totally right or totally wrong. What we do know is that CNN pushed out this story by sources, around the Elizabeth Warren camp. Then she confirmed it. Then they brought it up at the debate. This comes on the heels of, a series of polls showing that Bernie Sanders is in the lead, that in Iowa. And he's gaining steam ahead of this nomination. And what do you know? Weeks before, there is an effort to, paint Bernie Sanders as essentially a misogynist. And I think that's been led by the media, not even necessarily the Warren campaign. We don't know where the sources necessarily came from, but if people knew about this conversation, clearly it had been openly talked about amongst the campaign if that many sources were willing to talk about it. So I think it's not surprising that this is when this happened, that there's going to be some type of a, media moment for people to write all these stories about and talk about conflict within the Democratic primary. But when it comes down to it, I mean, that doesn't change the dynamics of the race. As you saw, Bernie Sanders raised more money than he ever had during a Democratic debate the other night. So and it was from new donors as well, largely. So there's still the energy that has been propelling his candidacy. I don't see wavering because of this.
Well, my sense of it is, get your reaction to this. It was a tactical decision made by both camps because Bernie's his camp was putting out the notion that Elizabeth Warren was an elitist, which my guess it comes from polling. Focus groups. So much of that drives politics anyway. And so if there's a weakness that Elizabeth Warren has, it's this sense that somehow or other she's not in touch with ordinary Americans. And so Bernie's people started putting that out about 2 weeks ago, or I can't remember, losing track of time, Miles, with the robocalls that they were putting out, the scripted calls.
Well, it was a script for canvassers, for door-to-door
canvassers. Canvassers. That's it. I should correct it. And then Elizabeth Warren's people started putting out that Bernie's a misogynist, and I'll bet you anything that their focus group and their polls show that's a lingering issue from the 2016 Hillary-Bernie race. Now, I think there was both bum raps, the one against the elitist tag against Elizabeth Warren, I think, is a bum rap, and I think Bernie as a misogynist is obviously a bum rap. And so I don't think either campaign is innocent in this one. I think they're getting down and dirty, Miles, because they realize in many ways one is blocking the other, and they have to remove that impediment if they want to win the nomination.
I would push back against the idea that this is, that there's both sides are equally to blame in this, spat, because it's one thing to have a campaign script which doesn't call Elizabeth Warren elitist. I mean, I think we should be honest about what the script said, which was that she's not bringing new voters into the electorate the same way that Bernie Sanders can, because her base is largely more upper class and college educated, and these are people that are traditionally part of the Democratic base. I think that's a political argument. You can, say that is, trashing Elizabeth Warren, as she said. I see that a different way. I agree with you that it was clearly somebody made this political strategic move, not Bernie Sanders. I mean, he's not involved in writing these, scripts that go out to like a small number of volunteers. So I don't think that that's, a high level campaign decision. Certainly not the way that Elizabeth Warren has chose to approach this, through putting out her own statement and then bringing it back up on the debate stage. That said, I can't, I don't know what that conversation was like in 2018, so I can't, comment on that. And I think that should be how we all approach this. That said, I mean, Bernie Sanders has said a woman could be president many, many times. He encouraged Elizabeth Warren to run in 2015 against Hillary, well, ultimately, against Donald Trump, but as a Democrat to take on Hillary Clinton, and Elizabeth Warren refused to do so. That's kind of why Bernie got into the race himself. So to think that it was, he fundamentally believes a woman can't be president when he encouraged a woman to run for president, just a few years ago, that is very difficult to square for me, and I think it is for most people. I think that's different than having a campaign putting out a script that shows where, the kind of political calculus of choosing which candidate you're going to support. That said, I do agree that, clearly Warren camp sees Sanders supporters as the ones that they can pick off, and that's really their only path towards victory in some of these early states. It's not so much the Biden voters, and so that's why they're, trying to create this wedge. That's what I believe. I'm not a strategist. I don't know. I haven't seen the polling, but that really looks like most likely the tact that's taken. And it was political operatives that decided to do this. It wasn't necessarily Elizabeth Warren or even her supporters, or certainly not the organizations that are fighting for social justice that have endorsed her that were part of this. It was, people making strategic political choices. And I think that that's a bad choice for advancing progressive politics in the U.S.
Miles, I got to ask you this. I presume you watched the debate live. Did you watch it? Okay, I was watching it live on my little cell phone because I don't have cable. And just going back to the moment where Abby Phillips asked the question of Elizabeth Warren the way she did after Bernie's vehement denial. I gotta tell him, I was like, what? I remember was she being ironic? Was she being funny? I was like dumbfounded.
What they
I
said,
never seen anything like that.
I mean, what they said afterwards, I think, is very eye-opening. In that, in their, spin room, the commentators are all talking about it, and they're like, "Well, Bernie denied it, but it was a reported story, so he's clearly going against the truth." And using CNN's own reporting as the evidence that this is reported, when you can't report on a he said she said conversation and make come down on either way, because there's just no way to have yes, sources told you that, but those sources were only relaying what one side of that conversation said. So it doesn't count, in my view, that that's some airtight case that this thing happened, but that's how they defended asking the question that way, and that it was based on a reported story. But I think anybody watching could see, no, that's the reporting doesn't matter, because there's two people that both are, describing this conversation differently. So.
Man, I got to tell you, when Abby Phillips hammered him on it with that direct question, she goes, "So are you saying definitively that you did not say it?" And he said yes. I thought it was like I've seen so many courtroom dramas, Miles. I thought that at that point she was going to say, let me turn your attention to this film I have. And it'd be like footage of Bernie going, "A woman can't win."
Yeah.
And they're like, what do you say about that?
But there is no footage of that, because
of
course not. What there is footage of him is, saying in 1988, "I believe a woman could be elected president." So, I mean, that's the footage I think we should care about. The other thing is, I think it's fine for us to have this conversation. We talk about all kinds of political issues of the day and everything. But if this is the conversation that's dominating news headlines and debate about the future of this country ahead of the first primaries, the most critical election of our lives, I think that's a really sad result of, where our media and our politics have taken us. And I think it's definitely, I know it's benefiting them. I work in media. I know I see the clicks and the shares and all of the attention that is being paid to this story. And of course, they would all these outlets would much rather talk about some interpersonal dispute rather than talking about, what we should do about dealing with the fact that 500,000 people are sleeping on the street, and there's a housing crisis in America, and that the planet is on fire, and look at Australia. So I think that we should not lose sight of the fact that this is a common tactic that media and campaigns take when they're trying to reframe the conversation. And the beneficiary of it, sadly, I think, at least in that debate, was Joe Biden, because this was the chance to have a referendum on the leading candidate who, as Sanders has pointed out many times, has an incredibly weak record when it comes to issue after issue. I mean, look at even, I know Democrats voted for this NAFTA 2.0 today, but look at some of the people that came out against it and followed Bernie Sanders' lead. Chuck Schumer came out against it. The Senate Majority Leader said he wouldn't vote for this USMCA proposal because it didn't address climate change strongly enough. That's exactly what Bernie Sanders said in the debate. That's the kind of, debates we should be talking about. And yet there's so few stories written about trade, which impacts all, look at Pennsylvania, look at Ohio, look at Michigan. These are the states that Democrats need to win, that went for Trump, and largely because of outsourcing of jobs and the devastation of communities. And yet, in the way, even though that was discussed at the debate, in the wake of it, people are just talking about the, what happened off mic between Warren and Sanders. That to me is not a productive debate in terms of moving people. And I guarantee if you go knock on doors in any of these early states, they're not all going to be talking about, what happened in a conversation in 2018. They're talking about losing their health care and being mired in debt. So I think those are the kind of issues that we should mainly focus on.
Now, you mentioned health care. And this is one of my pet peeves, is how the debate has remained fairly the same. I've watched every debate. I think you have as well, because we've talked about them.
Yeah.
And the debate you talk about framing a debate to undercut, at least my perspective. The debate is always framed as, if we go to a comprehensive plan, the one that Bernie advocates, or even Elizabeth Warren, we're going to bankrupt America. Yeah. We can't afford it. And so Joe Biden, Amy Klobuchar, That's what they say. The questions that come in underline that point. It just continually. I say this on the show all the time. It's the national version of a debate we have in Chicago where like there's no money for nurses, but there's money for Lincoln Yards. You know what I'm saying? How do you think Bernie can Bernie talk beyond that? Do you think his message can get beyond this like conventional wisdom that is just so defined, is so rigid in the mainstream media?
Well, the obsession with deficits has been a reigning principle of both major political parties in the U.S. for a very long time, certainly throughout my lifetime. The difference is that, I mean, I think it's employed cynically on both sides, but the Republicans are very good at, feigning concern about national debt and deficits when it comes election time and they're trying to defeat a Democrat. Mm-hmm. What they're not, look at what Trump is doing with this trade war right now, right? He's got this trade war, and farmers across the U.S. are upset because they're not being able to sell the, goods that they were selling before. And so Trump is just paying them off basically with like stimulus spending, and that's raising the deficit, and it's all to appease farmers, which that's ostensibly a good thing, but it's not going through the normal congressional avenues of getting this passed, and it's all to blunt anger over this trade war that he's taking out with China. Nobody's talking about how we pay for that. Nobody's talking about how we paid for the the deficits resulting from the tax cuts. Paul Ryan never talked about deficit concerns or the need for austerity politics when it came to defending spending on Iraq, multi-trillion-dollar effort that's still ongoing to this day. So I think it's completely cynical when the Republicans do it. But, Nancy Pelosi herself has said we need to have these pay-go rules and pay for everything, include how we're going to pay for everything up front, as if that's any type of sound economic sense. I mean, look at the foundation of the New Deal is all this Keynesian economics. We need to stimulate the economy. We need to spend so that we can get people with money in their pockets, so that we can have a better, infrastructure, so we can put people to work. That's the type of agenda that's being pushed by not just Bernie Sanders, but look at all the movements that are supporting him right now. Look at the People's Action that just got on board with the Sanders campaign. The type of homes guarantee and federal jobs guarantee that these types of groups are backing are popular because they would actually help American people. And when we talk about it, what Republicans will always say, what Democrats will say often is, we got to think about this like our own budgets. We got to go home and look at the ledger and make sure everything's balanced. That's not how a national economy works. You have treasury stocks, you have bonds, you have, there's all kinds of ways that you can work to make sure that you are accomplishing the domestic spending priorities that you put in order, while not worrying about how you're going to, bankrupt the country. Because if we were going to, we've already bankrupted the country by spending so much money on, trillion-dollar wars. If we were really concerned about it, we would have a conversation about that. But we're not. We only really talk about it when it comes to programs, as I said, are going to redistribute wealth and benefit poor people rather than rich people.
Yeah, it is a sucker's game. I agree with you that when the Democrats start talking like Republicans, because Republicans don't even pretend to care about the deficit.
Well, they do when it's election time. Then you have Paul Ryan saying we need to cut Social Security and Medicare, something else that Joe Biden supported.
Let me amend that. They only care about the deficit when it's a Democratic president that they could tag with being a deficit buster. When it's a Republican president, and I go back to Ronald Wilson Reagan back in the 1980s. Oh my God, he was the deficit soared under on Ronald Reagan because with his tax cuts. I didn't hear Republicans complain about Republicans. Republicans are no joke, man. They don't care.
No, because
almost got to give them credit. They just don't care.
I give them credit because they understand that politics is a game of power, and you need to win. And when you do that, to employ these arguments to benefit your own agenda, and Democrats just buy into it again and again and again. And I think that's part of the reason people are so fed up with what they see as like the establishment, and why it's honestly a benefit to have somebody who is perceived as outside of that establishment as being the standard bearer, because they're willing to say, hey, I didn't vote for NAFTA. I didn't vote for, permanent normal trade relations with China. I didn't vote for the Iraq War. I think that that's a really positive thing to show that you broke with the consensus to support a working class agenda.
All right, my next guest, Jeff Johnson is entering the studio. I'm going to bring him on real soon. But before I do, we had a lot of discussion about this yesterday, impeachment. I urge everybody to check out the David Ferris interview I did, which drops on Saturday. We did a deep dive on impeachment. We had long discussions with Monroe Anderson, our Trump expert. Trump, and more Trump yesterday. Today, the articles of impeachment were advanced to the Senate. I've not been able to hear any of the debate or discussion that's happened in the Senate. You got to listen to a little bit.
I think it's worth noting because today is the official day that the trial begins in the Senate, and so they read out the articles of impeachment. The managers, Adam Schiff read the first article, which is abuse of power. One really important note that is that the Government Accountability Office, the GAO, came out with their findings that, yes, Donald Trump did violate federal law by withholding the aid to the Ukraine. Now, the Trump administration, of course, objects to this. However, this is an independent fact-finding body in the government. This isn't some Democratic-led operation. It's the GAO. So that is, going to be, I think, a major element of debate once there's actual questioning in the trial. And also, this Lev Parnas character is back in the news. If you remember, I talked about him back in October of last year when he was fired or arrested when trying to flee the country. And now, what do you know? He's back and spilling the beans. He just went on, he went on Rachel Maddow. He went on CNN as well. And he said, look, this goes all the way up the chain of command. Trump knew about everything. He made explosive claims that the actual reason that Pence decided not to go to Zelensky's inauguration, because they did cancel it the day before, was because they refused again to open up an investigation into the Bidens. You could say, understandably, and this is very fair, like, this guy's under indictment. He's trying to get a good deal. He's willing to squeal. He's willing to say anything. But the detail in which he gives about these operations, and of course they turned over a massive trove of evidence, of text messages, of emails, all, showing this type of relationship. And, it just shows Rudy Giuliani is really the linchpin in all this. And what a guy. He was like in the deepest, darkest corners. And if you listen to Lev Parnas, he's clearly kind of a Goonie type guy, and is very open about that. And that's the kind of people that Rudy Giuliani both had him as a client and supposedly, he was working for the Trump campaign. So it's all this weird relationship dynamic going on. Unfortunately, the underlying dynamics of this trial have not changed. Mitch McConnell is still refusing to see any witnesses. The Republican, unity around defending President Trump does not seem to be wavering at all. So it's near impossible for me to imagine a scenario in which they don't just acquit him and he claims I am vindicated and goes off into the election season bragging about that. So I don't think that there's going to be any, we'll see. I don't think there's going to be any major changes in that, but it is notable that today is when the impeachment begins, and it's going to mean that Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar are all going to be off the trail because they're going to be now sitting in the Senate for full days, 6 days a week for the foreseeable future, starting most likely on Tuesday after MLK Day. So that will have a big impact on these upcoming primaries.
All right, very good. Any articles you want to promote before I let you go?
Well, go to inthesetimes.com and read Bronco Mustich has an article about Joe Biden's Iraq War record and specifically how he mischaracterized it during the debate. We also have a piece by him on that I worked on with him on Amy Klobuchar's history of, while she says she wants to protect Obamacare, she voted she voted for these bills to repeal taxes that were part of what made Obamacare actually work in the first place. So kind of throws into question some of her claims about that. I'll also give just mention this really quick because this happened on Saturday. I went to the protest this March for Life rally, which people know about. This is this big pro-life rally that is held every year, and they had Dan Lipinski speaking at it. But the thing that was so surreal, and I posted about this on social media, is that the Patriot Front was out there. These are white supremacist neo-Nazis that are openly brag of that. They're all masked up in white masks, and they have their own flags, and they're chanting blood and soil and strong nation, strong borders, strong families. This whole very deeply disturbing right-wing, far-right, white supremacist rhetoric. And they're out there right in front of Dan Lipinski, and he's given his speech, and they're like defending the rally. One of the more disturbing things I've seen in the city of Chicago, and certainly seeing Democratic politician, somebody considered a leader in the Democratic Party, being around. I hope that he gets asked about that in some way, shape, or form. He's in this competitive primary with Marie Newman right now in Illinois' 3rd District, but just had to mention that because that was something you don't usually see, and I think is worth noting.
All right. Yeah, I saw you're mentioning that on media. Jeff Johnson on deck. We're going to bring him on. Miles, thank you so much. We'll be right back after this.
Thank you.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
There are 7,591 words in the Constitution of the United States. The word politics is not among them. That's because our nation's founders knew that politics and governing aren't the same thing. When campaigning never stops, governing never begins. I'm Michael Bennett, and for the past 10 years, I've been a senator from the great state of Colorado. You probably don't know me because I don't go on cable news every night. I didn't set out to be a politician. My last job was superintendent of the Denver Public Schools. And I didn't go to Washington to get attention. I went to pay attention to what would help the people who sent me there make their lives better. I've spent a lot of time on farms and ranches, town halls and living rooms, listening and learning. So you may not know me, but over the years I've learned a lot about what Americans struggle with. They work hard, but healthcare and prescription drugs keep costing more. For the last 40 years, 90% of Americans haven't received a decent pay raise. This is not sustainable for our families or our democracy. Since 2001, we've spent more than $10 trillion on tax cuts for the wealthy and wars in the Middle East. What would our country look like today if we'd spent that money investing in our own future? We could have saved Social Security forever, fixed the VA, raised the pay of every teacher by 50%. We could have led the world in solving climate change. We could have fixed our crumbling bridges and dams, but we did none of it. So we need to start now by investing in things Americans need the most. We need to fix healthcare and make good on what Obamacare promised. Affordable, high-quality health insurance with a public option that'll guarantee competition to every county in America and lower drug prices. And that's not Medicare for all, because I don't think 180 million Americans want to give up the insurance they already have through their work or their union.
All right, people, now available at ChicagoSunTimes.com. It's the latest podcast from Sun-Times reporter Fran Spielman. Around here, we call her Fran the Woman because she's a damn good journalist, all right? This week on the show, she had Planning and Development Commissioner, brand new to Chicago from Detroit, a man by the name of Maurice Cox. Here's a little bit of that. You can download the rest at chicago.suntimes.com.
Are you talking about a massive rewrite of the zoning code?
No. I am talking about convening a conversation with Chicagoans about the wide cross-section of things that go into making up the quality of life. That's transportation. That's the role of our parks. That's housing, what type of housing we want. The sum total of all of those is what I'm talking about. You can't isolate one item because they're all interconnected.
It's Maurice Cox, this week's guest on the Fran Spielman Show. Find it now at chicago.suntimes.com. Download it, listen to it, and enjoy it. Hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show is just moments away. But before we get into that, we need to thank the following unions for jumping on board and sponsoring this program. Unions like the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8. The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, sponsor this program, as well as the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. We can't thank these unions enough for sponsoring this show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's do this. It is Thursday, January 16th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, Union Man Jeff Johnson is back. Also making his return, around here we call him PC, Peter Cunningham. And now your host. Yeah, we just call him Ben. Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Jeff Johnson in the studio, ready to talk all the issues today with Jeff. Peter Cunningham got here early, God bless him, but he didn't bring his guitar. What good is he without his guitar, huh? I'm gonna make him sing.
He's a great guest without his guitar.
Wait, time out. What's it called when you sing without an instrument?
Acoustic?
No,
Acapella.
acapella.
There you
I'm gonna
go.
make him sing acapella. Wait till you hear
Just
that.
have him talk about politics. He's really good. He knows his stuff.
All right.
One trick pony.
He does know his politics. All right. Before we bring Jeff on, what you got for me, D?
We got an update here. We have a campaign ad to play.
Oh.
It's an ad for a candidate in the 3rd Congressional District. Ben, take a guess as to which candidate.
Marie Newman.
Nope.
Dino? Danny?
Nope.
Kalish?
Rush Darwish.
Oh, Darwish. Yes. Okay.
He's a big Darwish fan.
Yeah, where'd you get this one?
This comes from CapitalFacts.com. It says here,
Rich Miller.
Rush Darwish, the first Democrat running in Dan Lipinski's 3rd Congressional District to send direct mail. He now has a cable ad. This is on cable television, so if you've watched cable television and you've seen it, let us know what you think on the YouTube live stream chat. Here's the latest ad from Rush Darwish, Democratic candidate for the 3rd Congressional District.
I'm Rush Darwish, and I approve this message because America deserves a choice when it comes to our health care. Choice is a fundamental American value. The freedom to choose where you live, who you marry, how you make a living. I'm the only candidate in this race who believes that we should provide Medicare for all who want it, while also keeping a private insurance market so you have a choice when it comes to your insurance. If quality, affordable health care is important to you, vote for me, Democrat Rush Darwish for Congress.
There you are.
Wow.
That wasn't bad, right?
Well, you know,
Wasn't good either.
yeah. I couldn't have said it any better, Jeff. I mean, all over the map with that's like an Amy Klobuchar shit.
Exactly.
Keep your health care, your private, you're like trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah. If you want health care or Medicare, if you want.
If you want it. But you keep your private insurance too.
Yeah.
We've talked about this so many times. When Tim Ryan, who left the race early, but remember he was saying he was defending the union negotiated health care plans, all his union brothers and sisters back in Ohio. I'm like, I know every union guy I know would rather have the raise
Exactly.
and let the feds pay for it. So I don't know. Looks like he's trying to have his cake and eat it too.
I love cake.
Okay. Apparently loves the cake too. I'm not really feeling that commercial.
No.
And plus, I got to figure he's going to help Lipinski by in the race because he's going to siphon votes from Marie Newman. And so Lipinski's probably really happy about his position in the race.
I'm trying to pull up audio for the impeachment. It's going on now, so the impeachment trial. I'll see if I can get that before
All
the
right,
show
very
ends.
good. Yeah, I'll discuss that with Peter Cunningham when he comes on. Jeff, all right, so much to talk about. And let's just start with something that's on my mind. When you come on, we spend so much of our time talking about city finances, city budget, and particularly because you're an expert on pensions, we have the obligations that we're facing as taxpayers in the city. So one more time, we just start off. What are the fiscal obligations that we, the taxpayers, are facing this year in terms of pensions?
The pension contributions. Oh God. So at Muni, the pension fund I'm a trustee on, the city has to give us approximately $421 million. The police fund, they're giving them, police and fire are now jumping to actuarial required contributions, so they're figuring that out. But fire's under $1 billion fund, so their monthly payments are about $80 million. Police are going to be somewhere in the ballpark of about 550 or 600 million. Labor's pension fund is approximately, I think, because they're on the 5-year ramp like we are, and so their payments are about $55 million.
Wow. Okay, so a lot of money. I wrote it all down.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money, and so I'll start off with reefer. I'm a big proponent of legalizing reefer. Now, I've always been in favor of legalizing marijuana for just because I thought the war on drugs was a total waste of time, money, and I've never really believed that it could solve our problems financially. I thought there was limits to it, obviously, and when I see this headline, it underscores my belief even more, Jeff. Pot taxes in Chicago set to go even higher. Marijuana duties in city could reach 41% by July, with county about to approve 3% levy. The cost of marijuana is so high because of the taxes. I just got to think that most people are still going to go to the black market.
Yeah, but to frame the debate, though, too, and I don't know if anybody ever touched on this or not, but when's the last time you bought a pack of cigarettes in the city of Chicago?
The last time would have been never.
See, right?
Foul smoke, man.
I think the average or the total tax on a pack of cigarettes in Chicago is right around 43%. And now they're talking about doing the same thing with marijuana, and everybody's losing their mind about like, oh, they're going to overtax it. And now there's still a black market out there for cigarettes. And the Lucy market, when I was running for state senate, odd story, but I was standing on a corner in Ogden and by Central Park area. Yeah. Guy's out there outside of a convenience store, and at first he's eyeing me up left and right. And finally I'm like, oh, Jeff Johnson running for state senate. And the guy goes, oh, you're not a cop? I'm like, no. He goes, oh, okay. Lucy's, get your Lucy's. And
wait, that was state senate candidate.
Yeah, that was fine. Yeah. And they'd sell a loose cigarette for $2-3, and the guy, on Friday night would go buy 1 or 2 Lucy's and then buy a 40, and that was his Friday night. And so that market is still out there, and it's going to be out there. I think we all know that. But I mean, you're kind of taking away some of the underbelly a component to making it legal now, and you're still going to run into the problems of like not trying to get robbed by I was going to make a comment about somebody's kid who got robbed.
Yeah, don't make that comment, okay? I saw where you're going. Don't go there. Leave kids out of the discussion. But I hear
children out of it.
Yeah. All right. By the way, I feel like a lawyer who does cross-examination without knowing all the information. I forgot that you ran for state senate. When did you run for state senate?
Oh, God, no. 5 years ago? 6 years ago?
Which district?
In 5.
So who was the incumbent?
Patricia Van Pelt.
I vaguely remember that.
It was me, Bob Fioretti, and Patricia Van Pelt.
Oh, my God. Bob Fioretti ran for state senator. He's now running for...
yeah, he's going to be running for dog catcher. He's just going down the list of things that he can run for. I like Bob.
Listen, I always say, Bob Fioretti helped me out of some TIF stories back in the day, so nothing but love for Bob Fioretti from me. All right, so... When you take a look at these obligations we have for the pension, do you think raising money off of the sale of marijuana or cannabis, whatever you want to call it, is going to help, or do you think it's going to be inconsequential ultimately?
Inconsequential ultimately. State's getting the lion's share of that, and whatever they raise from the city, it's going to go to programs or anything like that too, and it's not going to help pension funds at all.
All right, so you don't even take it into the equation.
No.
So you think the main benefit of it is just like ending the war on drugs,
basically,
just moving on from that.
Make it legal, and then there's another angle there where the state gets increased revenue, and mind you, the revenue they're getting, whatever. And then when the state gets increased revenue, they can give more money through the state and flow to Chicago that way. So in that sense, it's just like, all right, we'll have the state tax it, and we'll get our chunk, proportionally to the rest of the state. So
Yeah, because the state distributes it back. It gives it back to Chicago if the reefer was ultimately sold in the city of Chicago. Right. And then there's this argument. I thought you were going to go here when we talked about cigarettes. I know the people I know who smoke, whenever they're in Indiana, they buy their cigarettes in Indiana because the taxes are lower.
A lot of my guys do the same thing. Go to Indiana, buy gas and cigarettes, come back in.
Although buying gas in Indiana, for somebody who lives on the north side of Chicago, is a loser's game. You drive all the way down to Indiana.
I say that all the time. You're wasting more money driving there.
Well, I like it. I believe it. You know,
I'm not giving them my money.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Whatever. But maybe the reverse argument could be made. I'm sure there's marijuana smokers in the state of Indiana. So
that reverse migration, they're coming in to buy that.
So there we go. That's an advantage we have over Indiana. All right. What about the casino update? All right. So we're not going to get any help.
Yeah. They're saying that something should happen, and they expect a fix, but they don't know how. They don't know why. It's like minor comments here and there. And I think part of that is that the mayor's team is trying to get their feet under them in Springfield. And by now, I think they're a little bit better. So before, when the last, she got sworn in, and then there was the session and everything, it was a little too quick to each other. But I think that you will see a fix. But right now, nobody's really talking about it.
I have not heard a word about it at all. And I've always assumed that they can't figure out how to deal with who's going to lose the money. Because, again, the way the law was written, they were to see the operator would get a third, the state would get a third, and the city would get a third. Yeah. Mayor Lightfoot said that wasn't good enough for the operators, and so somebody has to give. So who's going to give, the state or the city? So
exactly.
So it looks as though the pensions aren't going to get any help on that front either.
I think they will ultimately, but this is going to be, as you know, politics. Hurry up and wait is the motto of the day. So this will happen like the day before the end of the session. So.
You think they will cut a deal?
I think they will. Yeah, exactly. There's too much money to be left, and when you go into this, the sports books and everything like that, you tie all that in, and we're losing so much money to Indiana. So I think that it will happen.
All right.
I know that there's there's a push to get it done finally.
I will make a bet with you since we're talking about gambling. I don't think it'll get done.
Ooh.
I'm going to take that bet.
Really?
I
will take it.
I'll take it. And by the way, have you seen Uncut Gems?
No, I've not.
It's a great movie. I urge you to see it. If for no other reason than to realize how serious an addiction gambling is. It's a story about Adam Sandler plays a character who's just up to his eyeballs in gambling debts and can't stop.
Yeah.
But that said, the libertarian in me. Let's bring casinos to Chicago.
Yeah, exactly.
I want people to realize it comes with a cost. I don't see it, Jeff. I realize that the police and fire pensions, or the police pension,
police and fire,
are
contributions
dependent
go
on
to
it.
that,
and so they need that money.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand that we're depending on that money, but I don't know. They got to figure out that percentage deal. They may have to back off on that one. All right. So in absence of immediate relief from the casinos. In absence of immediate relief from the sale of cannabis, where will the money come from?
TIFs. Just throw out TIFs. Next.
Okay. Empty the TIFs.
The revenue, they're still missing, I think it's $168 million for the ambulance fees that they're supposed to collect from Medicaid. And, I think the city says it's a no-brainer. They're going to give it to us. I see the federal government, just because of the administration issues, I see them hold that up. So that's a $168 million blow to the budget. There's a couple other, revenues there, like when they did they refinanced the debt, and that was a $180 million savings. So there's, that's 340 right off the top. That's kind of dependent upon like a one-time revenue fix. What happens going forward? And we had a pension meeting today, and so what we were talking about was our long-term obligations and like going forward. So the city's on a 5-year ramp to pay us more money. The 2019 they gave us $341 million. Then this year they're supposed to give us $421 million, jumps to $579 million. And then from $579 million right now to the ADC payment, because now in 2023 we're going to jump to actuarial determined contributions. It's supposed to go from $579 million to $885 million. It's about a $300 million jump
in 1 year.
In 1 year, and this is just for the municipal pension fund. This isn't taking into account the other 3 pension funds.
Oh my.
But the interesting thing is that fire and police pension funds are jumping to actuarial determined contribution for them this year. So they're going to get what the actuaries say, and to be funded at 90% by 40 years. So the city can technically say that they are making the full contributions to police and fire pension funds. And now, mind you, the fire pension fund's 16% funded. Police is around 25% funded. So, but they're making the additional payments to get them to 90% in 40 years. So we were talking about our obligations today, and like, all right, where's the money going to come from? How do we do this? And for our investments, for 2019, the Muni Fund returned 16.4%. And now at first glance, I got people saying like, oh, my 401k went up 30% or whatever, But, we're an institutional investor, so we have to invest in all asset classes in the event that the market tanks. So we got real estate, fixed income, hedge, alternatives. And so 16.4 is pretty good. Our assumed rate of return, like what we're supposed to get, was each year is 7%. Is what like the actuaries determine, like, okay, over 5 years you're going to get on average 7%. So we beat the assumed rate of return by more than double. So that's a good year. And now we're going to all these forums and pension conferences, and it's what's 2020 going to bring? And everybody keeps talking about the bubble's going to burst sooner or later. We're 10 years into a bull market, and it's a matter of what happens and when does it happen and how bad. Is it another 08? Or is it another just like knock some of the froth off and go along? And so with the elections coming up, there's a lot of fear there that if there's a changeover in administration, markets tend to usually do bad. And if there's a market downturn, the muni fund's kind of in a very precarious position as far as what we do because we need those returns. And by most accounts, they say that the markets should do okay this year. They're not going to, knock anybody's socks off, but they'll continue that slow and steady up. There's going to be more volatility day to day where it's going to be down 300 one day, but it's going to be up 310 the next and stuff like that. And so it's a lot of this was the first pension board meeting of the year. And it's a lot of all right, what do we want to do? How do we protect ourselves as fiduciaries? How do we protect the members? How do we make sure that the money's there?
Well, how do you protect the members? How do you protect if you're cautious, you're worried about a market downturn? What do you do right now?
Well, from an investment side, we've got more defensive in our investments. To take less risk, basically. So if the market's down a lot, we're not going to lose as much. But if the market's up really high, we're not going to capture that high. So we're kind of, we're starting to position ourselves more defensive. We're doing a lot of defensive positions. We did fixed income last year. We're doing global. We just did global low volatility, and we're trying to make sure that if this correction does come, we're going to be protected on the downside.
Are there people behind the scenes who are saying they're worried about a change in the administration?
Yeah, I've had some people that are very apolitical, don't truly care, but it's like their market. They're these investment geeks, and they don't care about politics, but the market, they're concerned that they just basically any change in administration in the first term, I guess historically has been pretty bad for the markets. So they're kind of worried about that aspect of things.
I'm trying to remember. I remember when Obama came. Of course, when Obama came in 2008, or in 2009 was when he was sworn in.
2009. Right when the markets crashed.
The markets were crashing before. It had nothing to do with the change in administration. So that's what he inherited when he took office. I heard this. There was the article that I've been sending to my guests to read, the assigned reading for today. Look at Peter. He's supposed to be reading and taking notes.
Hold on.
Rick Wilson's article. And Rick Wilson is a Republican strategist. This is how he made his career. counseling Republican candidates on how to defeat Democrats, woke up one day and decided he cannot stand Donald Trump. And so he's advocating very strongly. He's written books. He goes on talk shows, what Democrats should do to defeat Donald Trump. I'm always a little wary about taking electoral advice, from anyone who is a Republican. I would love to hear what Peter Cunningham has to say about that, as well as you, Jeff. But one of the things he talks about in this article that I just read by him is how the tax cuts by Donald Trump have juiced the market. That's what he called it. It's juiced the market, and that effectively the market is higher, is abnormally higher, artificially higher than it would ordinarily be, and so there will be a fall.
Yes, and with the president leaning on the Fed to lower the rates, and when he did the tax cuts to juice the market, an example, the problem is he's out of bullets though, and so he's exhausted kind of what he can do for the market from that angle of things, and so it's almost to the point where if there is a market correction, what can the Fed do, right? Their rates are so low that it's like shit.
Yeah, you're allowed to. It's a podcast.
Podcast, like I said. So the Feds, what are they going to do? Lower? How much lower can they go before we're in negative yields? And it's a matter of, I think that's a fear from an investment standpoint, is that, and then from a union standpoint, you look at how, the whole trickle down theory, we're going to give the tax cuts to these businesses, and that's not happening. Board members got better compensation packages, but it does concern me in that sense that, I'm not going to say they're overjuiced, but, because there's a lot of volatility day to day, and but it's something that, like I said, they're out of bullets to do anything.
All right. Let's move on to national politics, since I raised the subject of Rick Wilson. And one of the arguments that he makes in his article is that the Democrats should not, under any circumstances, nominate Bernie Sanders as their candidate. He believes that Bernie Sanders would be unable to win over the voters that the Democrats need to defeat Donald Trump. And this is coming from a guy who claims that more than anything else in the world, he wants to defeat Donald Trump. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, reading the article, and he has a very just a common sense approach of, you just want to be up there, whoever the Democratic candidate is, and you're going to go, I'm not that guy. And people are going to go, oh, okay, I'm going with you. How'd that work out for Hillary, right? You could have put, I say, if you put any, not any, but most any other person in that spot, Donald Trump's not our president. People actually came out to vote against her because they didn't like her. There's people that I talked to, they're like, I wasn't going to vote, but I don't like her. I'm like, Jesus Christ, really? Yeah. And so you get into that where it's like, your campaign is going to be, I'm just not him. And I have this conversation a lot with people. I think Trump is keeping his base. And then you have his vocal base. And then there's this, what do they call it? The silent train, or there's this term out there for the Trump supporters that in public won't say.
Oh, that's a dentist theory. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that and they call it. There's a name, the silent troop, or the silent Trump, or whatever it is. And they listen to people like in regular conversations, like, oh, this knucklehead, and then they just sit there and don't say anything. And like at quick appearance, like, oh no, he didn't defend Trump, but he didn't knock him. And they're just laying low, and so there's that theory that there's a large chunk out there. And unless there's a good candidate that really hits a lot of the bases, I say this, and hopefully I'm wrong, but I think Trump wins re-election. And I got 4 bets, and whatever. I tell people vote your pocketbook, right? Because markets and job security and whatever. But I think he wins re-election right now.
Why do you say that?
He keeps his base. Anybody on the fence is going to look at the markets. They're going to look at the economy, their 401k. They're going to look at their situation, even though there's some income inequality going on and people are working 2 and 3 jobs. But then you got Trump, that gets up there and says all this stuff about how things are great and everything. Like, oh, okay, So he wins that middle road that's on the fence. That like, sure, he could be a knucklehead sometimes, and and the common comment people take away. They should take away his Twitter account. Other than that, most people just, go about their daily day and everything's going fine.
Yeah. The Dennis theory is that we might as give the credit where credit is due.
Thank you.
There's two-part theory. I've added my own part to it, but you can't really believe when white people say they're not going to vote for Trump. They're okay, and I add to that.
What do you mean?
Well, it's a two-part theory. It's really my theory married to Dennis's. My theory is you can't believe it when a black person says he's going to vote for, when he tells a pollster he's going to vote for Trump, and you can't believe it when a white person says he's not going to vote for Trump because there's a sense of guilt that people are embarrassed to say they're voting for Trump. The reason I put the racial distinction on it is because I think all these polls that show that Donald Trump's black support is like 8% or 9% are not matched by any voting results. If you take a look at any actual voting results from the 2016 election in a black ward or a black precinct, Donald Trump got at best 1%. So my takeaway is, there's a group of voters who lie to the pollsters about how they're going to support Donald Trump, and then there's another group of voters who lie to Trump that they're not going to lie to the pollsters that they're not going to vote for Trump. So I think that the American voter is not telling the truth to pollsters.
Exactly.
And they distinct it, so it breaks down different ways. This has been my sense. So I think that's what you're getting at when you talk about the silent.
The silent.
I'm going to end the conversation by saying this. I hope you're wrong. We've already made 2 bets. I think I'll take the bet with you just for the sake of it.
Go.
But
All
I
right.
still think I'm going to win that casino bet because I don't see that coming down the pike anytime soon. Wait, when do you think it's going to happen, by May or January? The casino?
May.
May. Okay, so you give yourself all the way to May. All right,
Exactly.
This bet will drag on to May.
I'll take the over on that time. Yeah.
But the one thing that Rick Wilson says, which is, he just said, Democrats, his advice to Democrats, forget the popular vote. Just campaign in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio.
Play the electoral game. Yeah.
Yep. He goes, that's what Trump did, and it worked for him. So, anyway, Jeff Johnson, thanks so much for stopping in. Appreciate it.
No collusion.
No collusion. Thank you very much, Donald Trump. We got Peter Cunningham on deck. We'll bring him on when we return.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
There are people here I know who disagree with me about this proposal, and that's healthy in our democracy. But to be clear, doing nothing is not an option.
Hey, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Simple, pure.
Hey, everybody, we're back. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Peter Cunningham in the studio. Peter Cunningham in the studio. Political strategist, comes in once a month. We talk politics. Sometimes he brings his guitar. He didn't bring his guitar today.
Yeah, I didn't bring it. It's cold. My guitar's made out of wood. It doesn't take the cold very well.
It's okay. Don't worry about it.
Why? I want him to bring the guitar.
It's cold out.
If I brought it, I was going to sing "Everybody Must Get Stoned" because that's the new theme, right?
Yeah, I sang it at the start of the show. At the start of the show, what we do is we check the mics to see if they're working. So I sing a song. If that doesn't drive away every listener we ever had, and so in honor of you, I sang "Everybody Must Get Stoned." Bobby D, Bob Dylan. You got an update, young man?
Yeah, I'm trying to find the video here of the impeachment hearings. I'm going back and forth here. It looks like they're on commercial breaks or pundits are talking. So I have a few clips here that I found on ABC News. Shout out to them for the audio here. First up, we got Representative Adam Schiff reading the impeachment articles. Shout out once again to ABC News for the article. It's okay you didn't bring your guitar, Peter Cunningham. Don't worry.
In the history of the Republic, no president has ever ordered the complete defiance of an impeachment inquiry or sought to obstruct and impede so comprehensively the ability of the House of Representatives to investigate high crimes and misdemeanors. This abuse of office served to cover up the president's own repeated misconduct and to seize and control the power of impeachment, and thus to nullify a vital constitutional safeguard vested solely in the House of Representatives.
Mm-hmm. All right, Peter Cunningham, the last time you were on the show, I think, as I recall, you were a little cautious about impeachment. That's my memory of it. It's been a while. What's your thoughts about it now? Here we are. The Senate is about to begin the trial. What's your thoughts about it?
I mean, the open question was whether it helps us politically or not. The closed question in my mind was whether they had to do it, and they had to do it. What he did was absolutely an abuse of power, and what he, obstructing Congress the way he did is entirely unacceptable. We set up a system of checks and balances, and we're supposed to live by that. There's so much more about this guy that's just despicable. I mean, Cass Sunstein, he's Obama official. He's written a lot of books. One of the points he made is that you don't have to break a law to be accused of impeachment. You can just be derelict in your duties. If you stop going to work, for example, which Trump does a lot, but you could be impeached for that. And so he's done so many things, from lying to hiring his kids to spending public money in his own golf courses and things like that. That is just so outside the norm. But what he did here, I think, is absolutely, he needed to be impeached. The open question, again, is, does this play to his strength or to his weakness? I hope it plays to his strength. They had to do it under any circumstances.
Wait, you say you hope it plays to his strength?
I'm sorry, I hope it plays to our strength, is what I meant.
To the Democratic strength?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that voters reward them for it, which they should. But, voters are fickle.
Well, we were talking about that with Jeff before you came on, the notion that voters lie, just flat out lie to pollsters, so it's really hard to gauge where the voters are. So it's sort of difficult to make a policy based on what voter. You should probably just make the policy based on what you think is best for the country. There's a radical thought, Peter Cunningham.
Yeah, and I think, but I also think that it's helpful to know where people are at. I think if you say, okay, we want to do a Green New Deal, but nobody supports it, then you got to think about how to frame it differently, or how to sell it differently, or how to build public will for it. But it's not going to get you very far if you just propose stuff that nobody supports. So I think it's helpful to get a sense of where people are at. Michael Moore was talking about the fact that no one knows how to poll working class Midwestern voters back in September of 2016. He predicted Trump would win 2 months before the election, and that's specifically what he was saying. People don't know how to poll white working class voters. So,
well, I don't know how you can poll anybody who's making up an answer. I don't know. It's like
one of the tricks they do is they do this. I'm not asking you how you feel, but how do you think your neighbors feel?
Oh, yeah.
That's one of their little gimmicks to sort of see if they can figure it. But again, can you really hang a political strategy based on what people say they think their neighbors feel? That gets a little bit funky. Also.
Well, that gets into that gets into the issue that the great Bernie Elizabeth Warren spat. The issue is, can a woman be elected president of the United States? And where did it was a response that people gave in polls. Well, I have no objection to voting for a woman, but my neighbor objects to it. So when you hear that, what's your takeaway?
I think it reflects a sense that people don't think they're ready, that they think others aren't ready, and therefore they're sort of, throwing some shade on the idea of a woman being elected.
So you think there's some merit to that notion that a woman cannot be elected?
I think there's some sliver of the electorate that probably votes against women just reflexively, just as there's a sliver that votes against people of color, people who are gay, people who are different. I do. I think there's some people who still vote based on those factors.
But do you think, how strong a factor do you think it was when Hillary Clinton lost?
Small. I think it was small. I think America is ready to elect a woman. And the fact is she got more votes than Trump. So, they did elect a woman. Yeah. It's just that we have this electoral college with its quirks. But I don't think the woman factor was what hurt her. I think what hurt her was I think it gets to what's wrong with the Democratic Party, broadly speaking. They've just lost touch with working class people. And they don't speak to them in a way that they understand. Bernie's figured out a narrative that connects on one level. The economy's rigged. You're getting screwed. That's one narrative. The narrative I always push, as you know, is we have to remind them that we fight for the middle class promise. We fight for the basics: jobs, home, health care, education, retirement. That's what Sherry Bustos is pushing very, very hard in all of those red to blue districts. She runs the DCCC. And every day she's tweeting about healthcare costs, because that's what polling tells you people are most concerned about. Voting, working class people are most concerned about healthcare costs. They have jobs. As we know, the economy's strong, but they're really, really worried about healthcare costs. They're still afraid of going bankrupt. They're still afraid of a serious illness breaking the bank.
That is why I find it baffling that the Republican Party would tie itself to a policy of eradicating what's left of Obamacare.
Yeah, I don't understand it. I don't understand why working class voters do that. I guess it's because they're tapping into something else. Maybe that racial issue. They're tapping in and saying, this is Barack Obama's idea of this. This is socialism. Maybe that's part of it too. But I think it's also race.
Did you watch the last debate?
I did, yeah.
All right. Everybody that's come into the studio has addressed the debate. Do you think there is an implicit bias by CNN and their commentators against not just Bernie, but just the sort of left of center viewpoints that Bernie expresses?
I think the whole debate has been framed as the left versus the center. And, take healthcare, right? We've turned this debate about Medicare for all versus public option versus, the centrist approach, as if that's the biggest debate going on in the Democratic Party. The fact is, Bernie would sign a public option bill if it got to his desk. and couldn't get Medicare for all. He wouldn't veto it. And Pete Buttigieg would sign Medicare for all if it got to his desk. He wouldn't veto it because it's progress. It's not their ideal version. But I don't think that debate is what really divides the Democratic Party. I think what does divide the Democratic Party, I think the fact that we have so many people focused on single issues rather than people coalescing around one broad central vision, one common vision of what the country should be doing. I think we're divided because we have upper income people who don't feel the economic inequality issue as much as others. I think that there's a big division in the Democratic Party about whether climate change is our number one issue or not. Some people think it is, and some people don't think it isn't.
You wrote an essay with Mayor Pawar. We'll get into that.
Alderman Pawar.
Yeah, well, former Alderman Pawar.
You said Mayor Pawar.
No.
Oh, you said a mayor.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
I did not promote him. I know who he is. He was my alderman for 8 years.
Okay,
I remember how excited I was when I saw him debate way back when he was running for the very first time.
Yes.
We'll get into that essay, the notion that there is a common, there's just like a common, commonness that binds us, unites us. I like to believe that's true. I'm a little concerned that it may not be true, but I just want to take one point. I'm not sure. You could be correct that Mayor Pete would sign. You're probably correct that Mayor Pete would not veto a Medicare for All bill, but I just don't know if a Medicare for All bill would be possible in a Mayor Pete administration because he wouldn't be pushing for it. It's so difficult to get something like Medicare for All through. You really have to have like an LBJ type president who's like, this is what I want.
I have to say that I feel the debate is on the wrong issue. The real issue is costs. Most people in America have health care, whether they get it through the government or whether they get it privately. The problem is the costs. And yet we're all debating how to either give, the sliver of people who don't have health care more health care, or whether to shift it all to publicly funded to get rid of, premiums and things like that Bernie's saying are co-pays. But the real issue is cost. And I don't know whether Medicare for All or public option is going to do a better job of lowering costs. But that is what's on people's minds.
Yeah, how much money it costs to have health care, how much money comes out of your paycheck every 2 weeks or every month to pay for your premiums, that cost. And then if you're on a private insurance, good God.
What your deductibles are, not everybody has these Cadillac plans like the public officials who make the laws.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say the Chicago Reader employees when you started off. All right, let's talk about the notion of a common good. Do you actually believe that?
Well, what I believe and what we said in the piece is that American history has many, many examples where we put the common good first. I used the example of a rugged individualism as sort of this myth about how America was built. And really, America was much more built by public-private partnerships or by communal activities, whether it's the wagon train. Okay, Lewis and Clark had 30 guys with them. They weren't actually just on their own, We settled the West with the wagon train. We became the breadbasket of the world because of the Homestead Act and because of the Department of Agriculture and because of the land-grant colleges and because of crop subsidies. We have all these examples. The tech industry has tons and tons of government research in every single iPhone. Mm-hmm. And so that's how we move our society forward. And yet we have fallen into this myth over the last 40 years, really. Reagan was the one who really got it into the public mainstream, that trickle-down economics. Just greed is good, trickle-down economics works. Make sure that the people who are most aggressive at getting money have as much money as possible because it'll trickle down. Well, it doesn't trickle down. We have astonishing income inequality today. So I believe we have a trickle-up economy. So to me, the best economy is one that puts as much money as possible into the bottom so that money then trickles up. They pay rent, they buy groceries, they buy retail, it moves into the banking system, eventually it moves into the investment system, and ends up on Wall Street again. It's like a tree. It's like the fruit of a tree. It all comes up. And then what happens to the fruit of a tree at the end, Ben? It falls to the ground, right?
Okay, yeah.
And it replenishes the soil.
Yeah.
That's the way the economy really works.
I thought you were saying somebody eats the fruit. I didn't know where you were going with that. But you're starting to sound a little like me, Peter Cunningham, like you've been a reader writer your entire life.
But take education is an issue that I've done a lot of work with.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as we're all acting only in our self-interest, I got to get my kid in a great school. Then you're going to have certain outcomes, right? You're going to have magnet schools and a few people getting into magnet schools. It's only until you start thinking about other people's kids and you say, you know what, it's really not right that we underfund low-income schools more than wealthier schools. We spend, on average, $1,000 less per pupil nationwide on lower-income kids than we do on higher-income kids. So unless you say to yourself, I want to be taxed higher so that we can make that equitable, then it's not going to happen. You have to see that that's actually in your interest, because as long as we underfund low-income kids and undereducate them, we're going to have an underclass that is struggling to share in our prosperity. You have to think about other people.
All right, I buy that, but I've not seen evidence, definitely in the last 30 or 40 years, that people see a connection between their life
right,
and the life of a poor person.
And to bring it home even more, look at the affordable housing issue, right? Everybody says they're for affordable housing, but you ask them if they want to build it in their neighborhood, and they don't want to build it in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
I talked to Pawar about this. I said, how many affordable housing units did you build in your ward in 8 years? And he said about 10.
Yeah.
He said it was just impossible. It just was impossible to do. And now we have California with just an absolute crazy affordable housing crisis because of all these local zoning laws that make it impossible to build affordable housing. People have to say, I want this.
Yeah.
I want this so that low-income family can live in my community. And they don't want to.
I'll take it one step further. I happen to know a little something about Alderman Pawar's ward because I live in it. And the investment that the city of Chicago made in those local public schools had the result of raising the cost of living in that neighborhood, because suddenly realtors said, we have the best schools in the city of Chicago. You want to be in the Coonley School District? That's a premium, and that would they would use that to promote the sale of housing, would raise the value of the house on the market, which would make that neighborhood that less affordable. So it had the counter effect, if you will, of this goal of affordable housing.
Right, and that's true in neighborhoods all across the city. I wrote another piece a couple of months ago in the Sun-Times where I talked about how Austin and Englewood would really benefit by having an influx of middle-class families. And a bunch of people said, oh, well, that'll lead to gentrification. Okay, well, there'll be a little bit of gentrification, but you'll also have thousands of families and homeowners there and filling up the schools there and buying things in those neighborhoods. So I think the gentrification issue is complicated. I always say the only thing worse than gentrification is no gentrification. I mean, you got to have some development. You got to have growth.
All right, before we get into the gentrification issue, I have to get you to put your political strategist hat on and talk about the showdown that occurred at the debates between Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. What impact do you think that has on either campaign, and how would you deal with it if you were a political strategist, let's say for Bernie or Elizabeth Warren?
Oh, I think that I don't think it's helped either of them. I think it just made it look like they're having a spat, and it didn't gain votes for either of them to have this out. And I think one of the theories is that other people really fanned the flames on this issue, that it wasn't them who put it out. But a lot of people trace it to Elizabeth's campaign. So maybe I'm wrong about that. But, I think it's not a big deal, really.
You think ultimately it fades?
Yeah. I think it just, I mean, is it possible Bernie said some version of that within a context? Yeah, maybe. Maybe he said something like that. Does he really believe a woman can't get elected? I don't think so. So I just think it's either a context, something taken out of context, or not true. Mm-hmm. And in Elizabeth's case, she has a little bit of a trust problem because of some of the things in her past. I've seen a number of people raise the Native American issue. I would have thought everybody would dismiss that issue, but I hear it coming up, and so now you get into the whole issue of lying, and that doesn't help her, because some people think that she's been a little loose with the truth on a few things. Well, I don't buy it. I think she's a terrific candidate. I think she's got a great platform. I think she's run a great campaign. She stumbled a little bit, so but I mean, everybody stumbles once the heat gets hot, gets up there.
Yeah, I guarantee you, if either Bernie or Elizabeth Warren is the nominee, this issue will be raised by the Republicans. I guarantee you.
What issue? That Bernie said a woman can't be elected?
Yes. In fact, I go one step further. This is just a replay of 2016 when the Bernie had the Bernie Hillary split. And then the emails were released right on the eve of the Democratic Convention, completely undermined the talk of a common good at the very worst time for the Democratic Party. Those emails were released. So the total cynic in me thinks the hackers have already got all the trashy emails already, and they're ready to release. I hope I'm
right.
wrong.
Well, I'm not surprised. I'm sure that the hackers are the ones who are planning this, but what's Elizabeth's advantage in escalating this more?
I don't know. Well, her advantage, I believe that it was.
She had a good debate, generally speaking.
She had a good debate, and she had a great counterpunch on the issue of electability, and she delivered.
She had the line of the night.
She had the line of the night. She delivered it well. She kind of lost it there. I don't know what that. It was a bizarre moment where she said nobody has defeated a Republican incumbent within 30 years. And then Bernie said, "Well, I defeated one," and she goes, "Was it 30 years ago?" I don't know if you saw that.
I know that was so silly. It was exactly 30 years ago. So. Yeah. I don't know who's right.
I don't know who's right. You have to look
at
when did it happen within the 30 years. I mean, she just looked bad in that one. But in general, I think it's pretty clear to me that it was a tactical decision by the Elizabeth Warren campaign to try to exploit whatever bad feeling there was left over from the Hillary Clinton-Bernie fight on the issue of some Bernie bros being vociferous in their support of Bernie.
Right,
it was clearly a tactical issue.
Right, and there's some image of him being a misogynist, and so it just fed that.
Yeah, and so that's why she played it. So it's not like she's innocent in all this. It's hardball Chicago politics by a senator who's not even from Chicago.
Yeah.
All right, speaking of Chicago, we're going to take a break. We come back, we're going to talk some political Chicago issues, talk about crime. Peter Cunningham always discusses how policing issues when he comes on the show, and he mentioned gentrification. We'll get into that as well. We'll be right back with Peter Cunningham.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit admiralx.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
How did you go from sharing stories over the years to deciding to write a book?
Good question, Mayor. Good question.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Live from the Chicago Sun-Times, Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right, we'll take us home. Don't bring Maya in the studio. That was Mayor Lightfoot asking the tough questions of Hillary Clinton. And Maya goes nuts every time she hears that. Peter Cunningham is our guest in the studio. Did not bring his guitar, but next time he'll bring his guitar.
Or
Okay?
if you don't, it's fine. You're very smart and you like talking politics with us. It's okay. You don't have to bring it.
All right.
Really good musician, though. Really good.
Yes, he is.
You sang a song last time. It was about like being on a beach, I think it was. That was.
Wait, was that
damn
last time
good
or the
song.
time before?
That was the last time.
Oh, he did the John Sebastian song the time before. Yeah, he's like every other time. He brings the guitar, then he goes, you know what, Ben? I'm spoiling you with this guitar thing, and then he doesn't bring the guitar. I've noticed that, Cunningham.
Yeah.
Like he brought the guitar, then he didn't bring the guitar. Then he brought the guitar, now he's not bringing the guitar. I know, I'm
You're
on
messing
there.
with our host's head. Now, is there like a website or a link or anything where people can find your music or anything like that?
Somewhere, I'm not sure. Bandcamp, I think it's called Bread and Butter Band, something or other.
He's a Rambo.
Oh boy, I tell you what, a master of the internet. I don't know. It's somewhere out
I'm
there.
so 1990s. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, well.
Mark Zuckerberg in the studio, ladies and gentlemen.
He's got a cassette tape out there somewhere. It's so 90s. But no, before we get out of here, though, we went on the Ben Joravsky Show Twitter page, and we asked all of you a question in regards to the debate that happened a few days ago. Simple question. Did you watch the debate? That was the question, all right? You had 3 options to choose from. Your 3 options were, 1, every bit of it. 2, not a chance.
Yeah.
3, I glanced.
All right, I glanced.
Those are your 3.
Yeah.
Shout out to Pat Whalen, our social media guy. He's the one who put this question up here. The results are in, all right? Listeners, I know you're excited. Hang on to the wheel, please. It's going to be exciting stuff here. All right, did you watch the debate on Tuesday is the question. In it, 20%. Every bit of it.
All right.
And it's a neck and neck tie here. 40%, not a chance, and 40%, I glanced.
Wow. I watched every bit of it. I've watched every bit of every debate. I'm a junkie. What can I tell you?
What does it say about your listeners here? 40% not a chance?
Yeah, not a chance.
40% just a glance?
Nihilists. That's the Twitter followers, yeah.
And we wanted to do one more thing here. It's something I just made up. New segment here on the program, all right?
Okay.
We're always trying to reach out to our YouTube live stream chat. And every day, hey, we'll do this. We'll do the live stream chat champion. How about that?
All
Whoever
right.
had the best live stream chats of the day, we'll award them. I mean, they win nothing, but
No,
I mean,
we'll send them that blue Mustang.
okay, we don't send prizes.
Oh, okay.
All right, first up here, Daniel. Daniel weighed in on the YouTube live stream chat. It's been a while since he's done it. I'm glad he's back here. He put here, I think appealing to voter on an emotional level is much stronger than engaging them at an intellectual level, which is why Trump has turned out to be such a good political actor.
Well,
so Daniel says.
That is essentially Rick Wilson's argument. I made Peter read this long interview with Rick Wilson, who's the Republican who hates Trump. And he's saying people hate Trump. So that's where you should go to get the voter to defeat Donald Trump. They hate him. 42% love him. They're going to vote for him no matter what. But the rest hate him.
I've heard the same theory from a prominent Democratic consultant, David Axelrod.
Yeah.
He thinks that the winning argument is just exhaustion. People are just exhausted by this guy. And he doesn't mean everybody. Obviously, Trump's base is one thing. But those voters in the middle, a lot of them non-college educated women, are got to be just sick of this guy. Even if they agree with him on some issues, they just have, just the circus, the everyday circus is enough to just make you just want to turn off. And he thinks that's a winning argument.
Well, it is interesting, though. It does seem counterproductive. The notion, I'm exhausted, so I'm going to vote against Donald Trump. You need to be fired up to vote. You go, I'm exhausted. I'm going to have the energy.
I agree, and this is my one argument against Rick Wilson's theory about just going negative on Trump all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly he is, got a lot of flaws, and you can highlight that. But ultimately, I do think people need to vote for something. So what is it they're voting for? And this is where I keep coming back to my middle class promise. Rather than, and this is where I kind of agree with them, rather than these highly specialized policy plans. As I said, the argument about Medicare for all versus public option is not an argument that anyone's having in their own life. All they're arguing about is health care. Make sure I get it, and can I afford it? So that's what we should be saying. You will get it, and you can afford it.
Well, there might be a lot of people who don't believe you can get it with anything resembling the current system. You have another update?
That was Daniel's comment here. We had a gentleman by the name of Brian V. He weighed in today. It's his first time on the live stream chat. And, well, if you ask our live stream chat room, probably they hope it's his last time. He's of the Trump persuasion, Brian
Trump
V.
persuasion.
He wasn't being a troll, though. He's being as polite as he could be. But when they just say stuff that our listeners disagree with, they kind of go at him. But Brian V. said today, it doesn't matter who it is. Trump will win in 2020. If Bernie isn't the nominee, a lot of his voters will vote for Trump, and honestly, nobody is strong enough to beat Trump.
All right. Well, he's kind of contradicting himself within the same sentence. He says, nobody is strong enough to beat Trump except for Bernie. Well, that suggests that Bernie is strong enough to beat Trump. All right, let's get that sentence together, all right?
All right, so that was Brian
editing
V.
Brian's sentence.
And finally, it is our live stream chat champion of the day.
Okay.
Brand new segment, just made it up. Maybe we'll do it tomorrow if it goes well. It's Brianna.
Oh, Brianna.
Yeah,
okay.
Brianna weighed in with quite a few comments today here. She says, first off, no John Cass equals no big loss. That's what she said there.
Yeah, I'll
Listened to her
tell
show earlier.
Peter Cunningham about that.
She also said, I don't see any dim candidate who can control Donald Trump. We need a street fighter. The dim lineup doesn't understand how to hit someone in the face. And then she went on to say, one huge plus for Bernie is that he doesn't have the baggage Trump does. There are a lot of people holding their nose to vote for Trump. His behavior is distasteful for many of his voters. Congratulations, Brianna. You are today's live chat champion.
No, the John Cass reference, Peter, was I started off the show having a little fun with it. His column today was defending Bernie. He said that there was a bias on the part of the CNN questioner. I was like so startled that John Cass would write a column defending Bernie, against media bias. And then I went on the internet and started doing an investigation. I saw it was like a Republican talking point. So immediately the cynic in me, Peter.
Yeah.
Republicans think Bernie's the candidate.
They can beat.
They're promoting Bernie.
Right.
So I'm a Bernie guy as much as the next one, but Bernie people out there, don't fall for those crocodile tears from the Republicans pretending you're your friends.
Right.
They're not your friends.
Don't tell us their arguments.
Yeah. And that's why I have a little misgivings about listening to what Rick Wilson has to say, too. He's another Republican, but he claims he hates Trump and he really wants him to lose. So
I think the argument is challenging because the economy is so strong. I think it's, as Bill Clinton proved years ago, the economy is almost always the issue for people. I always say that every losing Democratic candidate wishes they talked about the economy more. And the economy argument is complicated now. There's extreme income inequality. Bernie had a great line in the debate the other night, half the country lives paycheck to paycheck. I think that's a really true statement, and I think it really resonates with people. Most people, the median income in America is about $60,000. There's a heck of a lot of Americans all over this country living on $20,000, $25,000, $30,000, $35,000, $40,000, $45,000. That's not a lot of money when you're raising kids, you're paying rent, you have a car, you have a job you got to drive to. So that is, I think, a big part of the narrative. But, we tend to look at the economy based on a low unemployment rate, based on the stock market. I think half the country doesn't have any stocks at all.
Yeah, that's why when Bernie talks about Medicare for all, that is the fastest way to deal with the issue of income inequality. Because if you take health care off the table as an expense coming out of your paycheck, you have more disposable income. And if you make it a federally subsidized insurance plan where the wealthier you are, the more you pay, then that is in itself, Peter, income redistribution. That's directly dealing with income inequality. And that, I believe, is why the wealthiest people in this country who support the Republican Party are against it.
Yeah, I think so, too. They don't want to give up their money. and they don't want to think about the others.
They don't want to think about the others. That's what I'm saying. God bless you and Mayor Pawar for preaching the common good. But I'm thinking it was in the Chicago Tribune. I'm reading this thing I'm like, how did they get this past the Chicago Tribune editorial board? That's number one. It must be an old favor that a mayor called in. And then the other thing is like, I could just see some guy in Kenilworth. Harumph!
Yeah. No, we got some letters, some nasty letters in response, but I think that there's a lot of truth to it. I think that when people remember what's special about this place, it's because we come together and we invest and do things, and that's what we need to do. We have crumbling infrastructure all over America. That's not going to be solved by trickle-down economics. We've got struggling schools. That's not going to be solved by trickle-down economics. Schools, I always come back to the school issue because I spent so much time in it. Look at the issue of integration, right? Mm-hmm. Integration was the big hope of 1954 Supreme Court decision. And for the next 20 years, they tried to force it, and it led to white flight, and it led to violent resistance. And here we are in 2019, 2020, and we're just as segregated as we were 50 years ago. Mm-hmm. So, and that's, frankly, a lot of progressives who say they care about integration don't act on it in that way. So it's on everybody.
It is on everybody. All right, let's shift gears to the policing issue, the crime issue. We talk about that when you're on the show. Charlie Beck, who's I don't know if he's the acting police chief or whatever. He has the position
Interim.
now. Interim.
I believe is his title.
Gave a speech. I did not see the speech, but it was reported in the Sun-Times. Read the Sun-Times account. I don't think I've ever seen anything remotely resembling it ever coming out of the mouth of a police chief in the city of Chicago in my lifetime. His essentially, I'm paraphrasing it, aggressive stop and frisk programs have actually led to more crime, which was sort of the theme. And that he said that, well, I'm just telling you what the count was in the Sun-Times, that when they relaxed those aggressive tactics in L.A., he said those aggressive tactics contributed to the riots, the Rodney King riots in 1992. Yes. And part of the way that they were able to reduce crime in L.A. was to move away, distance themselves from those old
Yeah, it's really interesting how Chicago is in many ways following in the path of Los Angeles. Los Angeles, of course, had the Rodney King incident in 1991, I believe. And it led to the riot a year later when the cops were acquitted in 92. But there was a video. There was a video, a defining video. And here we are, 2015, and the Laquan video comes out. And that's what forced everybody to stop and say. It wasn't Burge. Burge was like over here. It had a few people. But that isn't what broke the back of sort of the code of silence and the culture of abuse. It was the video. Now, it's still not done. And I just finished a book on the whole L.A. reforms. It's called Blue by a guy named Joe Dominic. And Beck is all over the book. And it took them another 10 years after the riots to bring in Bill Bratton, who really started to change the culture and really said you have to do something. And one of the guys he did was he took Charlie Beck and put him in the worst district in the city and said, clean it up. And Charlie Beck did a great job, and then he became the successor police chief. And so we have Charlie Beck now. We've got the video to force us to take action. We're just 20 years behind. And, they got their murder rate down to a third of our murder rate. We're still 3 times the murder rate of L.A. today. And they have 4,000 fewer cops than we do. And they have 1.3 million more people. So they've made some big changes, and they really they needed to make a culture change because they were a super macho department back in the 70s and 80s and 90s with Daryl Gates. They were all about macho, and they really had to change the culture and make it about working with the community and connecting. And Beck said all that in his speech the other day, so yeah. I was really impressed by it.
And last year there were 492 homicides in the city of Chicago. The city champion that were under 500, sort of a mixed message there. 492 is a lot of homicides.
It's a real lot of homicides, and the facts are we were in the 400s for most of this decade until 2016. So the first 5 years of this decade, I think one year we went over 500, but we were at 450, 420 even, up to 480. And then the Laquan McDonald video came out in November of 2015. And Gary McCarthy got fired, And in 2016, we had 761 homicides. We went up 59% in 1 year. So in the last 3 years, we've come back down to under 500. But we're right where we were at the earlier part of this decade. So we still haven't really changed the norm of gun violence in Chicago neighborhoods.
Now, you in relaying what you just said, you sort of made a connection between the release of the Laquan McDonald video and the increase in homicides. Do you believe there was a correlation?
I believe that the level of distrust that video reflected and affirmed, I think, was a contributing factor in 2016. I mean, I don't know why shootings would go up to 60%, 59%, but they did. I think probably the police were afraid to do their job, were fearful that they would, that they would get in trouble for doing what they believed was the right thing to do, which was to crack down on guys that they thought had guns and guys that they thought had drugs. And they'd gone too far with that strategy. And that's, I think, what Beck was talking about, that at a certain point that strategy works against you because nobody trusts you anymore. And without trust and without cooperation, you can't stop homicides. And when people think that there's no justice, which there wasn't, our clearance rate was especially low, it was about 25, 29% or something like that. When they think there's no justice, they take justice into their own hands. And so I think we were just in a kind of a no justice zone there for at least a year or two, and then it started to slip back, and the police got their clearance rate back up. This year they announced it's 53%. Now in New York it's about 75 or 80%, and in LA it's about 75 to 80%. So, we're getting there, but we have a long way to go.
Do you think the more detectives need to be hired?
Yeah, I think they did hire a couple of hundred more, and I think that helps. But that's a wing of the department where there was a lot of kind of, I'm trying to think about the right way to characterize this. Yeah, first of all, it was disproportionately white. So, you don't, without diversity, it's sometimes harder to build trust in the minority community. And they were disproportionately old school. The Burgess shop was in there, and so there were just a lot of guys from the old school. And I think one of the things that needs to happen, and is slowly happening, is that you got to start to, weed those guys out. Whatever they're leaving on their own through attrition. But there was just a lot of, that culture of, hey, we're going to get somebody for this murder no matter what, and. So that was a problem.
All right, Peter Cunningham, thank you so much. We're out of time here. Anything you want to tell people about? Any concerts, any articles, anything you want to promote before I let you go?
No, I'm just, it's a great new year for Chicago. I'm excited by Mayor Lightfoot's leadership. I think that, the crime is still a huge issue. I think her vision for the West and South Side is exciting, but, it's gonna require a lot more commitment from the business community to help with it. So I'm just hopeful for Chicago to have a better year.
All right, let's end it there on a hopeful note. Peter Cunningham, thank you so much. I also want to thank Jeff Johnson, Miles Kampf-Lassin from In These Times, Miles Porter, and, of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as Peter Cunningham will gladly tell you, back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Hey, and remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Spotify, Google Play, Apple, all that stuff. Downloaders, we live stream this program, right? It's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites and the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel. If you ever got some spare time, hang out, check the show out live, and join the live stream chat room. We'll see you tomorrow.